Buying a home is super exciting, and so is selling a home, because you've got a whole new endeavor, a whole new life to get to, and all kinds of new real estate plans. But doing them both at the same time, I don't know. That's almost like juggling flame torches and walking on a tightrope at the same time. That is super stressful. And if you are here in Kansas City and you're wondering, how do I buy a house and sell a home at the same time without losing my mind? Well, I got you. So today I'm going to be breaking down the strategies of doing that, and I'm going to be describing 5 different scenarios on what that looks like and some pros and cons for some of the scenarios as well, so that you can make the best decision on what process you want to use so that it's as smooth as possible. Hi, my name is Anita Cordell, and I create videos about all things Kansas City and actually what it's like to work here, live here, play here, and lots of other topics regarding Kansas City. And I give some real estate advice along the way as well. I'm a licensed real estate agent on the Kansas and Missouri side, and I help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest right here in our amazing city. So today we are going to be tackling a very popular question that I get, and many of you who are watching are in this scenario or are going to be in this scenario. That's how to sell your home and buy a new one at the same time. I will be covering these 5 different scenarios, and we're going to be exploring and deciding which one is best for you. So whether you are starting in a week from now or in a year from now, I can help you decide which one of the 5 scenarios is right for you and your family to meet your real estate goals, and to help you map out that scenario from a good time frame. My contact information is in the description below, including a link that goes right to my calendar. All you have to do is click on that link. It's super easy, and you can set up an appointment that is right for you, and we'll have a video conference call to start that dialogue about getting you on a good path. Also, if you are watching this video but you're not in the Kansas City market, but you're in this scenario, give me a call anyway. I have colleagues all over the United States, as well as into Canada and some other countries, and I can get you connected to a top-notch agent that will help you in your market. I've got you covered. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let's get into buying a home as well as selling yours if you have one to sell. All right, so here's the deal. Most people don't have the luxury of buying a new home, moving in, and then casually listing their home. Most people are not in that financial situation. For most of us, the equity that is from our current home is what helps fund the next one. That means that timing and strategy matter, and they matter a lot. Now, I've helped plenty of clients navigate this exact scenario. In fact, I have 2 clients right now going through this exact thing. So let's break it down and talk about some of the 5 scenarios that we have. Scenario 1 is where you sell your home first and then you buy a home later. This is actually the safest financial option that you have, where you list your home, you get it under contract, you close on the home, you move out, and you use those funds to purchase a property that comes up on the market later on. Now, the pros of this scenario are that you know exactly how much money you have to work with when you are buying that new home. And that's a huge benefit, because oftentimes when people are buying a home and they've got another one to sell, we have to use the comps and we have to use the structure of what's happening in the market in that moment, but it's still a little bit of a range. And so you don't know exactly how much. You have an estimate, and we can usually get pretty close to that estimate, but you don't know exactly how much money you will have to work with. There's also less financial risk involved with this scenario, because if your property takes a while to sell, then you're not stressed about what to do if it doesn't sell and you're under contract with this other home. So there's less financial risk, and you know exactly how much money. The cons is that you will need to find temporary housing between the moves, and you're going to have to think maybe short term, whether that's a short term rental. You're tapping into some of the proceeds that you were hoping to have to fund your new house, or if you budget and you know how much mortgage payments you are using and just find a short-term rental that's roughly about the same amount of money that you're used to paying on a monthly basis, then that's good. So think short-term rental. You have the scenario of staying with family or friends, or you can negotiate a lease-back, which I'm going to be talking about that at the end of the video. Then scenario 2, you buy first and then you sell. Now, this option works best if you're financially able to carry 2 mortgages for a little while, or you qualify for a bridge loan, or if you saved up enough cash or have enough funds in whether it's your 401k or some investment properties. If you have enough cash, then you can go buy the property and not have to worry about 2 mortgages. The pros of this is that there's no pressure when you're buying. You can take your time finding the perfect property that you want to buy. You won't have to worry about whether or not you are settling for a home that doesn't necessarily have most of the desires that you want in a home. You can really take your time to look for that perfect property that you've really been wanting, and you don't necessarily have to feel like you're rushing to make any decisions on purchasing your property. You move once, which is another pro. You go straight into your new house. It also gives you time to make some updates to that new home, whether that's improvements like painting or switching out the carpet or doing a little renovation if you want to. It gives you some time because you purchased it. You don't have to move out of your home, and you can take the time and then move everything out. The cons are that there is some financial stress if your old home does not sell quickly and you didn't pay cash for it. You'll need to qualify for both mortgages unless there are some other financial options that you have or you've paid cash for it. So really think about your strategy and your financial plan when it comes to making this decision. And an example is that one family in Overland Park bought first, and then they used what's called a bridge loan, and they sold their old home fairly quickly within a couple of weeks. And because they staged it and priced it right, they didn't have to actually carry 2 payments very long. So there are some options there if you're worried about it, but staging your old home properly is key. So they purchased their new home, moved into it, and then staged their other house, their old house, and got it sold fairly quickly. So scenario number 3 is the contingency offer. And this is another offer, and it's really making your new home purchase contingent on the sale of your current home. Now, there are multiple pros of each one. Obviously you don't risk owning 2 homes at the same time, and it ties the timing together usually. The con is that in a competitive market like we've been in for a while, sellers may not necessarily be overtly excited about having a contingency on their home. They like for the transactions to be cleaner, they call it. They like those cleaner offers over a contingent offer. So to eliminate this con for the seller, especially in a competitive market, clients will opt for another scenario, like that first scenario where you will sell their home first and then move into temporary housing, and so therefore they're a non-contingent buyer. This positions themselves for swooping in and winning with either cash or being a non-contingent buyer. Now, I will say this, that the market is starting to change here in Kansas City, and we are seeing more contingent buyers out there. So we're moving away from a seller's market and moving a little bit more into a buyer's market, or what we call a balanced market. So it is an option that people are actually utilizing as the contingency. Now, for a pro tip on this option, if your home is already listed, or better yet, if it's under contract, then your contingency is stronger. I've helped clients in Kansas City win with this strategy multiple times because you can show that their house was already attracting multiple offers. Now let's go through the contingency stages. There's actually 4 different contingency stages, And a contingency is when you want to buy a home, but you have a property to sell, right? So in the midst of selling your property, these 4 stages line up like this. The first one is you want to buy a home, but your home is not even on the market yet. And I recently had a buyer that was like that, where they wanted to buy this property, but their home is not even on the market yet. And it's really hard to get the seller to agree to that. However, there are certain situations where they will. If their house has been on the market for a really long time and they're struggling to get an offer, and then a contingent buyer comes in and makes an offer, that's a scenario where they will likely accept it if the terms are good. The pro is really more so focused on you versus the whole entire transaction. It's all for someone wanting to find that perfect home to move into and hope that that seller will accept their contingent offer even if it's on the market. And that can be sometimes hard to find because not all sellers are going to want to wait for you. But the pro is you. You can spend the time to find that perfect home. You don't really have a temporary housing situation that you can go to, then this would be the option to do. The con is that the seller is not going to like that your home is not yet on the market. And some sellers are very gracious and they understand that there is a plan that is set in place, especially if you have a professional agent that can help you. And if your current home is in a very hot market, or you can prove that at the price point that you are choosing that it's going to sell fast, then that is also a scenario that will help you win the bid. The second stage of contingency is you want to buy a home, your house is on the market, but it does not have an offer as of yet. You are on the market, and obviously this is more attractive to the seller because you are on the market and you're actively trying to sell it. Now, when I am a listing agent and I receive a contingent offer on my listing and I'm representing that seller, I will do a couple of different things that will help the seller determine whether or not this is a risk that they would want to take or be open to. I look at the property that they're trying to sell. I see how long it's been on the market, what the price point is. I pull up the comps, and I have some honest dialogue with that listing agent about the buyers who are trying to buy my client's home. It's a matter of gaining knowledge about the whole entire situation, about the home that is the beginning of that domino effect, if you will. And obviously, if it's not priced right, then it could be a part of the negotiation. This could potentially work if you dropped the price of your home because it's been on the market for so long. How many showings has it had? There's all kinds of things that will help be strategic in whether or not it's a good move for everyone. This stage gives insight, and it will help me plan out a great strategy to win the bid on a home that you're wanting to buy while we are working on selling your own home. So the pro of this is that, yes, you are showing the seller of the home that you are wanting to buy and that you're serious and working really hard to get an offer on your home. The con is that there's still some level of risk for the seller because they have to take their property off of the market and hope that you get an offer fairly quickly so that they're not losing a lot of time in this. But that is the next contingency phase. It's the second one. It's stronger than a contingency where you want to buy a house, but your house is not yet on the market. So the third phase is where you want to buy a home, your house is currently on the market, and you've got an offer, but you have not yet completed the inspection period yet. So the pro of this is, it does have pros because you are showing the seller that you have an interested buyer and that your house is marketable and it can get an offer on there at the price point that you are on. So it is definitely a pro to this scenario. The con is that you're still waiting for the inspection period to go through. And it's not necessarily a con per se, but it's just being aware of what challenges and hurdles that you still have to potentially go through because the inspection period is not yet finished. And so the listing agent of the home that you are wanting to buy is going to be asking questions about this. They may even want to look at the seller's disclosure. They may even want to take a tour of the property just to see if there's any major things that they see that could trip up the scenario. But the reality of it is this stage, the third stage, is stronger of a contingency than the other two stages because statistics show that once a property gets to the inspection period, I think the statistic, the last I heard, was like 94% of all properties that are under contract and get to the inspection period stay and go to close. So you're in a very strong scenario at this stage. Now, if you are at this stage and you have not found a property yet, so say you are wanting to make an offer of a property, you're still out there looking, and you've got a buyer for your house and you're in the inspection period, but you just can't find that home. It could be a stage where, one, you need to be prepared to stay at a temporary housing situation, or go ahead and talk to your lender. I have vetted lenders who fully underwrite my clients, which means that say you're at this stage and you haven't yet found a property, but you would still have to write a contingent offer, and tomorrow we find that house and you want to write an offer. If you use one of my vetted lenders, they can do what's called a fully underwritten file, where they go ahead and get all of the documents that are needed, and they already push your file through underwriting. And after they do that, they can literally close in a week and a half. It's so fantastic. So keeping that in mind, using a great lender that will fully underwrite you will help minimize your stress as you get down the road, especially if at this stage you just found a house and have to write an offer on that. Now, the last and final stage of this scenario, which is writing a contingent offer, it's the strongest stage, and it's when you have your house on the market, you've got a buyer, you've passed all the inspections, and all of the negotiation for the inspections has been completed, and you're just waiting for the closing of your properties. The pros of this are that you're pretty much a non-contingent buyer at this stage, and it's very attractive to sellers when they get a contingent offer. The cons are really that there's not really that many cons that I can think of, other than just making sure that the buyer of your home that you're trying to sell is smooth and everything is going okay, and that there's no issues with the lending. And that's when I can come in and have conversations with that lender to make sure that there's nothing that's going to inhibit that first domino effect of the whole entire transaction. All right, so now that we've talked about the first three scenarios, we're going to be going over the fourth scenario, and that's called a lease-back agreement. This, in my opinion, is a hidden gem, and it has actually been very strategic in several of my clients when I've negotiated for them on their behalf when they have a home to sell and they're trying to buy a new one. It's helped several of my clients. So basically, you sell your home, but you negotiate with the buyer to rent back it for a certain period of day. Now, most lenders will tell you that you cannot be more than 60 days because on the 60th day, you're technically going to be a renter at that point. And the loan that the buyers got to buy your home is now actually at fault or fraudulent because it turns into an investment loan, and that is not good. So they will only allow it for 60 days or less. So the pros, though, are you get your proceeds in hand and you have some breathing room to find your next home. The cons are that you're paying rent on your old house, and now the buyer has to agree to this so it works best in what I call a seller's market. So example, I had a client in Lee Summit, and they were a retired couple, and they needed a very specific house, but they were really stressed about all the different scenarios, and we were in a seller's market. They put the house up on the market. We did not have a property as of yet. They almost immediately got an offer on their home. In fact, they got multiple offers on their home, and it was like the first weekend there. So they started stressing, and I negotiated for this to occur for them to stay in their current home until they could find another one, or at least for the next 30 days of looking. And if they couldn't find something in that first 30 days so that their loan could go through, then they would have to adjust and pivot and get temporary housing. So what I did was I negotiated for them to stay for 59 days, which would allow for them to look for a property for 30 days and allow for their loan to go through for the next 29 days. And that way they were out of that house and didn't cause any issues with the buyer. It happened perfectly, and it worked amazing. And not only that, but due to the fact that there were multiple offers on this scenario, the rent that I negotiated for my clients for this scenario was free. The buyer allowed them to stay in their home for free. I negotiated that to occur, and for 2 months they were able to stay for free. Yep, free. This scenario was so perfect, and I could not have been more thrilled for my clients. You know, being a retired couple and trying to downsize and trying to get into a house that is more conducive for them at that stage in life with less stairs and the whole bit, it just was overly joyful for me to help them with that. And we were able to find a house in that 30-day window, and there were no issues at all whatsoever. All right, now let's talk about scenario 5, which is creative financing options. Now, depending on your situation, you might want to explore this scenario. Now, I did talk about bridge loans. Bridge loans are where you're basically qualifying to hold both mortgages at the same time by bridging them together. A lender will be able to tell you whether or not you qualify for that, and they give you some scenarios like sometimes you only have to pay the interest in the new house until that one sells. There's short-term loans also that can help you link your buying and your selling together. There's also a HELOC loan. If you have a lot of equity in your home, you can tap into your current home's equity before it sells, and obviously you have to qualify for the HELOC loan, but you can actually get that equity pulled out so that you can use it for the purchase of a new home. Now, several of my vetted lenders have some really unique programs that are helpful in situations such as this, where they help a buyer qualify as a non-contingent buyer. And it almost is like a person is paying cash for that home, or qualifying as a non-contingent buyer even though you have a house to sell. Now, there are some added fees that are involved with these scenarios, but they are worth looking into just to see if your financial plan will work in these models and if this scenario would work best for you. Now, I will say that these scenarios are not necessarily right for everyone, but they are worth knowing about. So, with these 5 scenarios, which one is best for you? Buying and selling at the same time can absolutely be doable. You just need the right game plan. So if you want certainty, you sell first. If you can handle some risks, you buy first. If you need a little safety net, then go with the contingency plan. And if you're wanting some breathing room, consider a lease-back. Every family situation is unique, and that's why working with an agent who understands timing strategies is so critical. So if you're in the Kansas City area and you need help with making this decision and this move, then reach out, whether it's a week or a year. I'd love to walk you through the plan, talk about some scenarios, even get you in contact with my vetted lenders so that you can have some dialogue with them to see what is good for you and your plan. And if you found this helpful, be sure and give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and as always, reach out. And if you miss a video, be sure and click that bell so that you don't ever miss a video about living and moving here in Kansas City. Now, if you want to have some tips on how to figure out how much your house is worth, I created a whole entire video about that. And I also created a video about 7 mistakes that Kansas City sellers make when they're trying to sell their home. Now, if you do want to know what your house is worth, there is a Google Docs in my description below that you can click on that and fill it out, and I will get you a document that tells you what your house is worth, or at least a range of what it is worth. And as always, remember to buy or sell, call Anita Cordell, #AnitaHome.